My name is Peter-Carlo Lehrell, and I have spent a career in government relations, public affairs, however you want to put it. Lobbying itself is a part of the government affairs, public affairs profession, in the same way that maybe open heart surgery is a part of medicine. Not every patient needs it, but when it is needed, it can be important. For myself, I've spent very little time in my career actually lobbying, going to people and persuading them of things. If you want to interact with the making of regulations, laws, systems, whatever, the world over, you first of all have to understand them. And then when you understand them, you can explain to people. The negative connotation of lobbying is not universal. If you go to Israel, for example, you are a very esteemed person because you are a lobbyist. But nevertheless, every country in the world, whether autocratic or democratic, needs to make laws, regulations, and they have to get the information from somewhere. And so it is done in different ways in different places. In some places, academics fulfill the function of informing lawmakers or the political class. In some cases, it's a small team of internal advisors. Politicians and authorities, whether autocratic or democratic, attempt to reconcile competing interests. The better they understand the issues, the better they're able to reconcile these competing interests and make better laws and outcomes. So the better the reconciliation, the better the political process works for the benefit of all. So it's now a question as to how in each country, what does a public affairs professional have to know in the same way that a doctor has to know medicine or a lawyer has to know law. He has to know how politics works, how, if you like, laws are made. And there is one famous quotation from Winston Churchill, actually, who said, there's two things you don't want to know how they're made. One is sausages and the other one is law. But the reality is that there have to be people who understand these in all the different countries. And it's in every country in the world, every place in the world, they have to build roads and have to have armies and airports and trains and whatever it is. It's just done differently in different places. And so, that reconciliation is what it's about. When Mr. Putin first came to power, my team and myself were asked to see whether we could abolish or reduce the tariffs that were put on the importation of large commercial aircraft. And the Russian state put those tariffs on to protect their own industry. And they also had the largest fleet of aircraft in the world. So unless they built a lot of airplanes, they would eventually run out of airplanes. They were still being bought by Russian airlines, Boeings and Airbuses and so on and so forth, or were being leased, because their fuel efficiency was so much better than Russian aircraft. Because all Russian aircraft were built for military uses. The Tupolev 154 was built to carry missiles originally. The mistake that the clients were making was to get airlines to try to lobby. And airlines did go and see the Russian ministers and said, we need these Western planes cheaply. But I said, please stop having meetings, because understanding the political system, a meeting in somewhere like Russia is something you do at the end of a process when you've already decided everything. So it was a question of getting the political allies in the system to achieve the outcome. And who better than to go to the manufacturers, who over time would have been the Russian manufacturers, who over time would have been embarrassed not to produce enough aircraft for the Russian market. So it became a question of allowing a temporary import and a leasing contract typically is 7 years. So we asked for temporary imports. There was no word in Russian for the word leasing. And the manufacturers agreed that it was a good idea to allow planes in for a short time while their industry, and they build some of the best planes in the world, by the way, caught up. So it was a question of changing the argument. Now, you don't just do that by going and seeing somebody. You have to change the whole strategy, the whole way people communicate. It shows the strategic nature of it. And the lobbying part largely was really just having some quiet conversations with the arguments I've just made and the facts. You cannot do any representation without good underlying facts. And that's what really competes. And you've seen in the populist world we have today, you see that because of the speed of communication, facts are suffering. Because Mr. Politician, elected or appointed, works on such short timelines from being confronted with a problem to having to have an answer, sometimes hours, that all he or she can do is to say something that will please the people that keep him or her in power. Unless we return to connect with facts-based, we are in deep trouble in an area of climate change, which does not lend itself to lots of arguments as to who does what. It lends itself to looking at the facts and taking some hard, cold decisions.